Aerospace technology advances at a rapid pace, and there is always a pressing need to test new aircraft and systems. The most famous test center in the world is Edwards Air Force Base. There, an elite corps of pilots tests the aircraft that will fight the wars of the future. Located on the vast dry lake beds of Southern California's Mojave Desert, Edwards Air Force Base has been a center for U.S. Air Force aircraft tests since the end of World War II. The Air Force's earliest jet fighter, the Bell XP-59, was the first jet aircraft tested here on October 2, 1942. Today, Edwards is the home of the Air Force Flight Test Center, the primary facility for evaluating new aircraft. They test everything, from small trainers to the exotic B-2 Spirit stealth bomber. The reasons for selecting the location are obvious. The desert offers vast areas of uninhabited land. The dry lake beds are ideal for runways, and the weather permits flying year-round with few interruptions from rain. Sharing the facilities at Edwards is the Air Force Test Pilot School, where students learn to test experimental aircraft and new flight systems being considered by the Air Force. The challenge of test flying attracts many of the finest Air Force pilots. Colonel Guy Gardner, former head of the Test Pilot School, was himself a test pilot and also an astronaut.
We have a lot of applications from a lot of incredibly sharp people that want to come here. This is viewed as a very competitive position that a lot of people want to come do. It's not for everybody. Some people like staying in the operational side of the flying business. When I was a young fighter pilot, this was my big goal, was to come to Test Pilot School. And there's still a lot of young pilots out there who view this the same way.
The nature of test flying demands not only flying experience, but considerable scientific and engineering training as well. The role of the test pilot is not merely to fly the aircraft, but to monitor the aircraft and all its complex electronic systems with an exacting eye.
One of the requirements to get into Test Pilot School is you must have a degree in engineering, physics, or mathematics. In my particular case, I had a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and a master's in aeronautic engineering. They would like for you to have flown two different types of aircraft, although that's not a requirement. Only one type is a requirement. And I'd flown two types at that time, 38s and 141s. And typically, the like for the multi-engine guys to have 1,500 hours or more, and the fighter guys to have 1,000 hours or more.
All the records of the people that apply go for a board, and they pick a few people as candidates. And then you come out for a flight evaluation, a small flight evaluation program. Used to call it a 5-flight eval, where you fly approximately 5 flights in a non-familiar airplane. I was current in F4s when I came here, so I flew my 5-flight eval in T-38s. And they want to see how well you adapt to an unfamiliar environment, and then still run through the things on the card that you need to do and do them at least relatively well, and how you handle yourself. And it's also a good chance for the prospective pilot himself to come out to Edwards and take a look at the program and see if it's really what he wants to do.
The Air Force is very selective of its new test pilots, since there are only 25 slots available in each class. The test pilot course costs the Air Force almost $1 million per student. The demand for strong engineering and science backgrounds stems from the growing complexity of modern aircraft. In recent decades, the academic requirements have increased accordingly.
As airplanes have become more and more complicated, over the years, we need that higher background education. Some of the students that are going through here today, though, have a much stronger academic backgrounds than I went through, and some of the flight techniques that they're learning are much more complicated than what I learned many years ago. The new fly-by-wire aircraft technologies that we have require a much deeper understandings in the mathematics and the technology behind them in order to be a good evaluator of how they're doing.
Once selected for test pilot school, the men and women in each class begin a rigorous one-year program. The program brings in pilots who are already familiar with operational flying, but who need to learn new piloting techniques important in test programs. The student test pilots are also taught aerodynamic theory to help prepare them to carry out their test flights. The pilots in the class include fighter pilots as well as pilots of heavy aircraft, such as bombers and transports. Besides the two categories of pilots, the class also contains flight engineers and navigators who will be responsible for other aspects of the test program. No matter what the background or specialty, the students face the same rigorous training standards.
The day is divided up into two halves. The morning is flying and the afternoon is academics. So we have two flying periods in the morning. Now a student will probably fly a couple to 3 times a week. So otherwise his time that's free time when he's not flying in the morning. However, I'll explain free time in a second. The afternoon we have 3 hours of academics each day where we actually teach them the coursework required to learn the objectives that we have here at the school. Now during that free time in the mornings and their free time in the evenings, we keep them pretty busy with studying for the academics and preparing for their flights, writing their test cards of what the flight's going to be, and then after they go up and actually gather data, they need to reduce the data, analyze it, and then prepare their reports, both written and oral reports. So it's a very busy year for the students here at the Test Pilot School.
For combat pilots familiar with the day-to-day routine of regular squadron life, the return to the classroom can be difficult. The courses are very demanding.
It was extremely difficult. I worked my tail off getting through. Academically, the flying itself was probably the best way to describe it. It's not quite as much fun as it used to be. Actually going out in a four-ship, going to the range or going to the working area for air-to-air, that was a lot of fun. With these missions, the amount of work you put into it, planning them and all, you go up single ship, you run through what could be called as a little bit of mundane, it takes a different mindset. You have to really concentrate, and the rewards are totally different than they were in the operational field.
The runways and taxiways of Edwards Air Force Base are constantly abuzz with the sound of aircraft. Throughout the morning, T-38 jet trainers take off, giving the test pilot candidates an opportunity to escape the classroom for a few hours. Sharing the runways are experimental and training aircraft from NASA's nearby Ames-Dryden Research Facility. The distinctive white and blue paint schemes of the NASA planes stand out from the military markings of Air Force aircraft. One sight that is especially familiar at Edwards is the unique orange and white paint scheme of the base's chase aircraft. Chase planes follow an aircraft that is being tested to monitor the progress of the flight. These aircraft are fitted with special instrumentation and camera pods to collect data during the course of the test. Various types of aircraft are used by the Flight Test Center as chase planes. Two steady performers are the A-7 Corsair and the F-4 Phantom. The A-7 Corsair is a Vietnam-era ground attack aircraft. Here its role leans towards the scientific. The A-7's stablemate in Vietnam was the F-4 Phantom fighter. The F-4, with its two-seat configuration, lends itself to missions where an extra pair of hands or eyes are needed. Another veteran twin-seat aircraft is the T-37 Tweety Bird trainer. The workhorse of the Flight Test Center's fleet is the F-16 Fighting Falcon. The F-16 is one of the Air Force's premier combat aircraft. Here at Edwards, it is one of the more essential chase planes. The task of test pilots is not simply to fly the latest jets. Aircraft that have already been in service for some years, such as the F-15 and F-16, undergo periodic upgrades to improve their performance. For example, a new computer might be added to their flight controls, or an aircraft might be adapted to fire a new type of missile. Once new features are added, it's necessary to test all these aircraft types to make certain the improvements work properly.
Fighters don't stay stagnant. As technology improves for the potential threat, then you need to counter their new technology with some new ideas of your own. That new equipment needs to be tested properly. Things that the F-15 and F-16 community could be testing at Edwards are not only new avionics, new radar units, or new software tapes to the radar units, but new weapons, and possibly some new flight control laws that might help the way the airplane handles. So the F-16 test force is one of our busiest test forces as far as number of sorties, number of hours per month. And that airplane's been around for quite a while, but there's so many new things that they're doing to it right now to make the airplane better for the line user.
Sharing the runways at Edwards is the C-17 Globemaster III transporter. Airlifts are an important ingredient in modern warfare. Developed by McDonnell Douglas, the C-17 was intended to modernize the airlift command and improve the ability of the Air Force to deliver combat loads anywhere in the world.
The C-17 is an airlifter that's designed to be both strategic and tactical, and to do direct delivery into the combat airfields. Current airframes, airlifters have to go from, let's say, from the States to a big base in Europe and transfer the cargo load to 130s, or trains, or trucks to get it to the combat troops that need it. Well, with the C-17, we can just take it from the States direct to the troops that need it out in the field. And that prevents a lot of delay in transportation and also gets to the troops sooner. So we are a much more effective unit fighting out in the field.
The C-17 test program determined it could perform its intended mission. Proof of its ability came during Operation Iraqi Freedom. The C-17s fulfilled their promise to deliver heavy Army units directly into combat zones. There they delivered Abrams main battle tanks, Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, and M113 armored personnel carriers from Rhein-Main Air Base in Germany directly to Iraq. Air Force test pilots in multi-engine aircraft at times share the cockpit with civilian test pilots. The C-17 test program included McDonnell Douglas test pilots due to their familiarity with earlier phases of the transporter's design and development.
The contractors, the test pilots they have are required by regulation to have attended either the Naval or the Air Force Test Pilot School, and they have in the past, all the guys we have. And we swap seats. You know, if I fly right seat today, the next mission I fly left seat. And the same with the contractor pilots. So it's truly a mix. It's a team effort to get the testing completed.
The C-17 program set test records at Edwards, completing over 30 test flights in the first 100 days of flying. Computer-assisted aircraft design and flight simulation make aircraft testing a less dangerous and risky venture than it was at the dawn of the jet age. But at the same time, it has reshaped the requirements for test pilots, demanding a rare blend of piloting skill and engineering aptitude. Despite the undefeated combat record of the F-15 Eagle, it is in the process of being replaced by the FA-22 Raptor. This jet began life as the YF-22 in the Advanced Tactical Fighter Test Evaluation. Starting in 1981, the ATF program was a competitive development effort, with two industrial teams designing separate aircraft, the YF-22 and YF-23. The Air Force was looking for major breakthroughs in two areas of fighter design. First, they wanted the new fighter to incorporate as many stealth features as possible without compromising the aircraft's performance. Earlier stealth aircraft, such as the F-117A Nighthawk, were primarily ground attack aircraft, not intended for dogfighting. The stealth configurations on the F-117 are ill-suited to a fast, maneuverable fighter. So a new generation of stealth technology was needed. Stealth is intended to reduce the aircraft's visibility to enemy radar. This is critical in modern dogfighting, as radar is used to guide long-range missiles. By reducing radar visibility, the stealth fighter pilot can target and eliminate his opponent before being spotted. In pilot's lingo, stealth technology gives the fighter a first look, first kill advantage. The second major technological breakthrough was dubbed Super Cruise. To reach supersonic speeds, current fighters must use their afterburners. This boosts the power of their engines, but at the cost of higher fuel consumption. Super Cruise offers supersonic flight with lower engine power, called military power.
The real benefit there in Super Cruise, the way I look at it, is probably twofold. It allows me to get from A to B faster with hopefully a reduced amount of fuel burn. But the biggest benefit, I think, is reducing my threat envelope while perhaps expanding the vulnerability envelope of potential enemies. If I'm in mil power, military power below, not afterburner, my IR signature, infrared signature of the airplane is reduced. So that one factor would reduce some of my threat envelope. Also, the speed, as it increases, allows less time for threats, either airborne or ground threats, to acquire me. One thing that the F-22 is stressing is not only to be able to cruise supersonically, but also to perform there. If we needed to a brake turn or do a rapid pointing maneuver to aim at another airplane for some reason, I still have the ability to maneuver the airplane, roll the airplane, and build up some G on the airplane supersonically.
Both the YF-22 and YF-23 were rigorously tested at Edwards to see if they met the demanding requirements for a new ATF fighter design. Though both designs satisfied these provisions, the YF-22 was ultimately selected as the winning contender for the Air Force's next fighter. The Air Force has designated it the FA-22 Raptor to reflect the aircraft's multi-role capabilities. The Raptor remained in test at Edwards to finalize the design before production began. Each of the test missions was meticulously planned to make certain its configuration was optimal. With only a handful of prototypes on hand in the early testing phase, the loss of a single plane could have set the program back by months. Colonel Rickerson describes a typical early test mission for the F-22.
We would start out early in the morning of the day of. Obviously, a lot of time and effort went in a previous day planning, mission planning, but the day of we get together in a mass briefing, probably 50 or so contractors and Air Force representatives at the briefing, going over every aspect of the briefing. A lot of effort has gone into planning and making every detail of the flight very precisely controlled. When we're finished with this briefing, then we have a more a smaller group of individuals will get together, the actual flight themselves, and brief up specific portions of the mission. Run out to the airplane, crank up, and taxi, and the actual takeoff will normally be preceded by the chase airplane doing a takeoff.
For all the advanced features incorporated in the Raptor design, there was some worry that it might be too much for the pilot to handle once it reached squadron service. Test pilots not only have to determine whether a plane flies as intended, but whether the interface between man and machine succeeds.
Definitely a lot is unique to the airplane. As far as flying it, getting in, taking off, flying the airplane, turning left, turning right, climbing and descending, the good news is it handles just like you would want an airplane to handle. The average guy that could fly a Cessna with a little practice, very little practice at all, wouldn't have any trouble. It's not a difficult airplane at all to fly, and it's designed that way. It's not supposed to be difficult, it's supposed to be easy to fly. Flying the airplane was second nature, and now I'm worried about the mission a lot more. I'm spending my time worrying about the people that are out there as a threat, people that perhaps are behind me as a threat. And that's what the airplane's set up to do.
The popular image of the test pilot is of a brave adventurer, using his wits to fly dangerous and experimental aircraft on risky missions. Airplanes have evolved, and so too has the right stuff. It takes great courage, superior flying ability, and a variety of other exceptional skills to be one of today's top test pilots.